challenges, upheaval, and conflict. That's why the NATO alliance is evolving to meet the future challenges of tomorrow.
In his closing remarks yesterday, the Secretary told reporters the U.S. remains committed to its NATO allies and European security.
From Kandahar to Kiev 20 years ago, none of us could have foreseen the ways in which NATO now contributes to global security. With the strong support of the United States, NATO has been and must continue to be a force for peace, prosperity, and freedom, not only in Europe, but around the world.
Last week, the head of the country's central bank floated the idea of dumping the greenback as the world's reserve currency, replacing it with an international.
You believe deeply in, and we believe just as deeply in our system. It is not our common beliefs that have brought us together here, but our common interests and our common hopes. The interest that each of us has to maintain our independence and the security of our peoples, and the hope that each of us has to build a new world order in which nations and peoples with different systems and different values can live together in peace, respecting one another while disagreeing with one another, letting history rather than the battlefield be the judge of their different ideas.
Thousands of people gathered to hear Barack Obama deliver key foreign policy speech on his current European tour. His vision for America's place in a new world order.
Returning vets could be a risk to our nation.
We've got to give them a stake in creating the kind of world order.
I think the new world order is emerging.
This is a hoax and a scam which is designed to transfer wealth and power from the private sector to the government sector and from the government of the United States to a world government.
And those people who have been yelling, oh, the UN's going to take over global
conspiracy theorists.
They've been crazy, but now they're right.
And who got the money? Hundreds and hundreds of banks. Any bank or that has access to the U.S. Federal Reserve's discount.
Tell us who they are.
No.
You know, financial terrorism. They have the ability to tweak the knob.
I am proposing that the Federal Reserve be granted new authority.
The ultimate goal of the carbon tax and the cap and trade is to destroy production.
This energy tax is the largest tax increase in American history.
We're actually creating a global warming police. So number one, they can come in, the federal government can come in and inspect your house and send you the bill. We're setting up a global warming Gestapo.
And one of the things that if you talk to our generals, they are desperate for is a civilian counterpart to our military forces.
I am fierce.
I've now been in 57 states. I think one left to go.
The president, when he was in Europe last week, he met with the king of Saudi Arabia. He appeared to bow.
You get, I guess, an alignment under a global world government. A new global currency, and a new world order.
That's not good. The guest just said that the dollar would collapse and replaced with some sort of global currency. I mean, have you checked the front page of the Drudge Report today? China is saying, hey, America, you really might want to rethink that whole healthcare thing. It seems pretty expensive. That is our bank. That's like your bank calling up and saying, hey, by the way, I think you guys are spending too much money. That's a pretty big house. If this bank doesn't give us any more loan, or if we burn this bank, there's nobody left. A one world government, a new world order, and the host doesn't even flinch. Apparently that's not even shocking to anybody anymore. Or they're not listening. On the scales of insane things, I just want to show you what we skipped past. Ready? Look at this. Put it up here. We're in a recession now. People argued we were even in a recession. We're in a deep recession. I think we're on the edge of a depression because of what we're doing. Okay, so we have skipped a deep recession and skipped depression, even the Great Depression. We went right to the collapse of the dollar. Then he went right to global currency, one world government, and a new world order like that.
Well, another day, another standoff. Behind me is the Ukrainian warship, the Slavutich. It's been blockaded by Russian forces. To my right are some Russian Marines who are keeping an eye on things.
Laura, I understand you're on embankment on the river, just steps away from where the protests are now. Earlier we saw you in the heart of London. The protests have marched towards Westminster and the Houses of Parliament. Tell me, what do you see there at the moment?
Well, you're right, Rory. I'm about 300 metres away from the main protest. You might be able to see remnants of it just behind me here. The main protest is taking place right in front of the Houses of Parliament where police have cordoned the protesters into an area. It's a little bit scrappy there at the moment. There's a sort of small outbreaks of violence, protesters trying to break away from the main group. And the police, for a large part, letting them. They're also making their way up just over here towards Trafalgar Square.
Let's take you overseas now to Greece, where workers have taken over the streets of Athens today. That's tear gas you see there. Protesters clashing with police. Some in the crowd threw Molotov cocktails and police responded. The hostile scene sent some Christmas shoppers running for cover. Now, demonstrators are furious over the Greek government's austerity measures, and Ariane McMillan is watching the story. She's watching it from London, but has more detail on the protests. And those are our latest pictures. What's the latest information from Athens this morning?
Heather, around 15,000 people are on the streets of Athens this morning, or this afternoon. Police are using tear gas against demonstrators, throwing Molotov cocktails and starting fires outside Greek Parliament. There are reports of a former cabinet minister being attacked by a mob who hit him in the face.
The U.S. is setting up an international coalition aimed at supporting rebels in their struggle. The so-called Friends of Democratic Syria will involve countries willing to prop up the opposition and pile more pressure on the regime. Direct military action is ruled out, but reports suggest that British and Qatari special forces are already in the conflict zone. And while the US and its allies criticize Russia for supplying military hardware to Damascus, there are now calls from American lawmakers to arm the opposition. As RT's Marina Portnaya reports, the region's already being flooded with firepower made in the USA.
At the United Nations Security Council, America holds one permanent seat. But when it comes to weapons, the world's largest arms exporter is often seen as sitting on two chairs.
They say there isn't an international embargo on arms preventing them from doing that. That is a fact. But that doesn't change the immorality of supplying a dictatorial regime that is killing its people in massive numbers every day. And we are deeply concerned about that.
As U.S. officials continue publicly scolding countries over relations with Syria, critics say the accusations are being thrown from a tremendous glass house.
The U.S. is hugely hypocritical in this regard because they've long been the largest arms dealer, and most of those weapons that the U.S. has sold historically, more than $400 billion worth since the 1960s, have gone to the Middle East. And you can't argue seriously that it's made that region any more stable.
In the past few years, nearly 50% of U.S. weapons exports have been flowing to the Middle East. Many countries with the biggest appetite for American weapons have also made headlines for carrying out brutal crackdowns against dissidents and opposition groups.
If you're our thug, you're okay, and if it's their thug, you're not. I mean, this is, for all of us who have been overseas, the duplicity and hypocrisy of American foreign policy is painfully evident.
According to congressional figures, America has sold $1.4 billion worth of weapons to Bahrain since 2000. And America struck its single biggest arms deal when Saudi Arabia ordered $60 billion worth of arms. The U.S. has long subsidized the Israeli military and recently supplied them with bunker buster bombs. Experts say this strategic arming of Middle Eastern countries is aimed at Iran and extending U.S. dominance in the region.
The deal that is going on right now is a massive build-up against Iran. It's not at all about, you know, human rights issues, and it's all about some geopolitical game.
So also developing tonight, the U.S. is beefing up our military presence in mainland Europe. We have learned that the U.S. is sending in more fighter jets like these at the request of our allies tonight. Earlier, our own Shepard Smith traveled into the disputed territory, into the heart of this international crisis, and he joins us now live from Ukraine, from Kiev, Ukraine.
Went to a naval institution and found Russian soldiers had taken charge of it. They had not allowed the Ukrainian soldiers to leave. They had taken their arms away. That's the same spot where a UN diplomat today was harassed by a mob, ended up hiding out in a coffee shop for a while before ending his diplomatic trip here early. The fact of the matter is the Russians control all of the ports, all of the naval installations. Ukrainian ships are blocked into their own port by the Russians, and the BBC even got video of Russian snipers in a tower watching over that area. So the truth is the Russians control Crimea. But certainly people here in Ukraine are wondering, especially in Kiev, which is more aligned with the West and with Europe, when does this end? Right behind me, the flowers that you see, that's the spot where the local police set up a wall. Police snipers got on top and killed a number of the protesters who were here. The hotel where we're staying at the time served as a morgue.
Police state that's what many protesters here in Toronto, where the G20 Summit of Economic Leaders is taking place, have called it. $1 billion spent on security, 20,000 officers deployed, officers who left this car after it was attacked by protesters who have since written on it police state, which is what many have characterized it. Out here on the streets of Toronto, protests have been going on all day. They've really been going on all week, but they've culminated today, which is when the actual G20 summit began. Now, many of these protesters were peacefully marching, rallying for various causes that they believe are not being heard by the leaders who are meeting here in Toronto. Many are still surrounding me, although the actual protest ended officially a while ago, ended by riot police. These protesters wanted to get down to the 5-kilometer-long fence that's 12 feet high in order to bring their messages to these economic leaders. They did not make it there. They were stopped blocks away by riot police. Now, behind me, this is another one of the cars that protesters wearing all black, according to witnesses, attacked, and it was surrounded by riot police who eventually backed off and gave it up, and the car has been taken over by protesters. Some that were speaking to me said, hey, we paid for it. It's ours now. It's the least we can do it's the least we get after all of this taxpayer money has been spent on this summit that we didn't want here.
Well, take a look at the pictures there, Rosemary. Again, you're watching it. They're coming in. That is
unbelievable. Look at that.
that is arriving on the coast. As you're watching these dramatic pictures here from Japan, the earthquake occurring about 150 kilometers east of Sendai, I do want to mention that Japan is not the only place that is being affected here, but my goodness, it is now taking the brunt of it there. Rosemary, that is unbelievable.
Extraordinary. I mean, you can see the power lines going down as all of that water roars through and rips. And of course, it is close to the coast. You can see the ships and the boats that are already in the harbour there, but all of the cars are being drawn into that. I mean, this is just extraordinary, seeing these pictures as this unfolds before our very eyes.
We've never seen this. We're watching a live tsunami hit Japan. If you're watching us from around the world here on CNN, that is what you're watching. Those are not taped pictures. That is a live picture of what appears to be a major tsunami arriving along the Japanese coast. Just incredible scenes there.
And of course, Ivan, let's talk about those waves, because you were saying like 500 miles for our US audience, 800 kilometers per hour for our global audience. I mean, just extraordinary strength involved in
Fox News alert on the world food supplies. We have been tracking this story for a few days now, and it is getting quite some attention. Food supplies getting very tight. And on the commodity markets, food prices soaring to levels never before seen.
Good evening, everyone. As you join us, medical volunteers across South Florida are making urgent plans to get to Haiti, where a cholera outbreak is continuing to claim more victims. It's a fast-moving and dangerous strain of the disease that hasn't been seen in Haiti for more than half a century. As of tonight, at least 250 people are known to have died, and more than 3,000 others have been sickened. The Haitian government fears many more will become infected and die as the epidemic moves even closer to the quake-ravaged capital of Port-au-Prince. News Channel 5's Liz Nunez spoke with one volunteer who's in Haiti pleading for help.
Now, South Korea is under fire for the handling of its worst ever outbreak of foot and mouth disease. Critics say the authorities were too slow to react and that their response to the problem is inhumane. The South Korean government says that it will cost about $1.4 billion to get things back to normal. That figure takes into account vaccinations, culling, and the compensation of farmers there.
Israel has intercepted an Iranian arms shipment to the terrorists in Gaza. This ship contains dozens of lethal long-range missiles, high explosives that could rain death and destruction on Israel's civilians and on our cities. I think what this reveals is the true face of Iran. Iran is smiling, talking soft in the international forums, but it continues unabatedly its aggressive behavior in the Middle East and beyond. It's sending the deadliest weapons to the most cruel terrorist groups and despots like the Assad regime. It has not changed one iota its aggressive policies. I think it's critically important to prevent this terrorist regime from having the weapons of mass death. This regime must not be allowed to have nuclear weapons capability.
You felt it your entire life, that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter, driving you mad. Do you know what I'm talking about? The Matrix. The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window, or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave, like everyone else you were born into bondage.